Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on what time you are logging on. But hello there, scholars. This is Mrs. Patterson, Mrs. Felix, and this is week 6, day 4, and we are learning all about elements of poetry. If you all please join me in doing our pledge of success so that we can get our minds focused on how awesome and how amazing and successful we are going to be today as we get through our work. I will be the rose that grew from the concrete, able to stand on my own feet. I am proud of who I am and confident in who I'll be. If I'm focused, I will achieve anything that I can dream. Look out, world, because once I've started, there is nothing stopping me. All right, so let's get started. And remember, as long as we stay focused, there is nothing that is stopping us. This week in language arts, we have been talking about elements of poetry. So we've been trying to explain the major differences between poems, drama, prose, and refer to those different structural elements in the poems. Some of those include verses, rhythm, meter, stanzas, and rhyme. So we are trying to fully understand all of those so that by tomorrow, Friday, if you are following along, we are going to proudly say, yes, I can explain the elements of poetry. I know what a verse is. I know what a rhyme is. I know what a meter is. I know what a stanza is. And I know what rhythm is. So that is our goal. So if you all please join me by turning in your packet or going to your Nearpod to page 306. It should look like what I have here on the screen. Today we're going to be reading 2 different poems, and we're going to use what we've learned this week about the different elements of poetry to help us better understand them and be able to fully discuss the different things that we come across in this poem. As we go along, I want you to start by reading the poems independently and use what you know to understand, think, and write about each of these poems. There will be some challenging and unfamiliar words and phrases that you come across in these 2 poems. I would like for you to place a check mark above any confusing words or phrases that you come across as you read. Before seeking a parent or guardian or dictionary, try to look inside, around, and beyond each of those unknown words and phrases to see if you can figure out the meaning of the words. So we know that all this week we've been working on learning and understanding the different elements of poetry. The 5 things that we are trying to fully understand are what is a verse, what is a stanza, what is a meter, what is rhythm, and what is rhyme. What we've discussed all this week are the different definitions of those and different examples from our poems of each of them. So the first thing we have is a verse. A verse is a line in a poem. When we compare this to a story, or if we compare it to an essay, a verse would be like one sentence in a paragraph or in a text. So our verse is just one line in a poem. When you group together all of those verses, you get what is called a stanza. The other ones we're trying to learn are things that you can't see. So we can see a verse. We can look at a poem and see one line, there's a verse. We can look at a poem and see a group of verses, and that's a stanza. The other 3 are elements that you have to hear. So you would need to read the poem out loud in order to fully understand them. A meter is whenever you have a pattern of strong and weak syllables in each verse. We took the time yesterday to go over our 3 different options of figuring out a syllable or a part of a word. We remembered that we had the robot voice where you can break it apart and speak slowly to hear each of the different syllables. We also had the clapping method, and then finally where you can place your hand under your chin and see how many times your chin goes downward. So that's how you would figure out a meter. Rhythm is very similar to when you listen to a song. When you look at just the lyrics, you can't always figure out what is the beat or what is the pattern of sound in the whole poem. So you add a beat to it that is known as your rhythm, that pattern of sound. And the very last structural element that we have to learn this week is rhyme. Rhyme is whenever you have the same repeating ending sounds in different words. So as we saw in our story yesterday about the tragedy, we had your, war, and more. All of those ended with the same ending sound of O-R-E. Today we're going to be looking at 2 different stories. Our first story is going to be Revenge by Felicia Witt. And then the second one is going to be called The Crocodile. And that one is by Lewis Carroll. What I'm going to do, since we have been moving along throughout the week, we've done our I do, which was Monday, where I showed you all how to find these things. We've also been doing our we do, where we worked together. I did part of the text and then you all took over from there. Today is going to be you do. So it's going to be your job, after reading through the poems on page 306, 307, and 308. You will have to complete pages 309 through 311 in your Nearpod on your own. So what I'm going to do in today's video, I am simply going to be reading these poems to you. So if you feel like you are a very confident reader, you know all your reading strategies, you can pause this video at this time and go ahead and read the poems to yourself and then complete your work independently. If not, I'm going to be reading both the story of Revenge and the Crocodile to you. All right, so if you decide to stick along, please follow along with either your finger or simply your eyes and make sure that you are actually reading as I go through. And this is our story, or our poem called Revenge by Felicia Witt. A very fine Friday, Fiona did say, and set out to write up a plan for her day. The first thing I'll do, said Fiona with flair, is find out who planted this gum in my hair. For Fiona, just moments ago, had tried prying her head from her pillow, which made her start crying. For stuck twixt her head and the pillow so dewy was a wad of gum, sticky, icky, and chewy. Who did this thing? Asked Fiona, whose eyes narrowed to slits of the tiniest size. Maybe a kid on whom I've played a prank, but that's nearly everyone. Fiona's heart sank. Yes, it's true. Our Fiona was known as a trickster. Neither parents nor doctors nor teachers could fix her. Every soul in her school had at some point been bitten by her tricks, though she seemed like an innocent kitten. So it made all the sense in the world, she admitted, that the gum in her hair was a message to quit it. I've played some great tricks on that crybaby Jack. Bet he put this old gum in my hair to get back. She would have to get back at the back-getter Jack, and she thoughtfully planned out the perfect attack. Jack's habits were something that Fiona knew, so she set out to replace his shampoo with glue. But Fiona, in haste to avenge her gummed head, had missed all the gum wrappers under her bed. She'd forgotten her own constant habit of chewing. And the past night, that's what she'd been doing. So that is our story, Revenge by Felicia Witt. So basically, I'm going to give you all a quick summary. We have a girl named Fiona who likes to play tricks. She's known as a prankster, and she's pranked pretty much everyone in her school. Her parents are aware of it. Her doctors are aware of it, and no one knows how to stop her from playing tricks. So we see that she wakes up and she's frustrated because there's gum in her head, and it's got her attached to her pillow. And so now Fiona is thinking and trying to figure out who it could be, and then she stops on the name Jack. And she thinks that because she played a trick on Jack, he probably put this gum in her hair to get back at her. And then as she continues, she realizes there's a bunch of gum wrappers under her bed, and she goes, "Oh man, I was chewing all that gum last night. Maybe that this is my fault. Maybe I fell asleep chewing gum and I'm the reason that the gum is stuck in my hair." So she got revenge on herself. You're going to see as you continue to answer the questions on 309, 310, and 311, it is going to make a lot of references back to this story of Fiona and her revenge on her prankster, which turned out to be herself. So that's why I wanted to read it and make sure that you understood the story, but it is your job to go through and identify those verses or those one lines in the poem. It is your job to combine those lines together and find your stanza. You also need to understand the rhythm of the poem. A very fine Friday, Fiona did say, and set out to write up a plan for her day. So you want to make sure that as you go through that you are reading out loud to see if you can hear that rhythm, if you can hear which syllables are stressed and which ones are softer to find those meters. And then looking at the end of the words like say and day and flare and hair and prying and crying and dewy and chewy to see if you can find all of those different rhyming words. If you will, please continue along with me. We are now on page 308, and we are going to read this second poem. It's a lot shorter than the one we just read, and this one is called The Crocodile by Lewis Carroll. And this is from The Hunting of the Snark and Other Poems and Verses. So what that means is this poem came out of a book that had a much larger collection of poems, and we are only going to be diving into this one. How doth the little crocodile improve his shining tail, and pour the waters of the Nile on every golden scale? How cheerfully he seems to grin, how neatly spread his claws, and welcomes little fishes in with gently smiling jaws. So a very short poem here. It's just talking about a crocodile and how it swims along the Nile. The Nile is a river in Egypt, if you are not aware of what that reference is referring to. So they're talking about how the crocodile is improving his beautiful shining tail. He's swimming through the water of the Nile. He has all the different scales on its back. And it says how cheerfully he seems to grin. So we see the crocodile and it looks like he's smiling. But as we read, he's spreading his claws and he's welcoming fishes in. So even though it looks like he's smiling, he's really getting prepared to eat. And it says, with his gently smiling jaws. So all this poem is talking about is who this crocodile is, what it looks like, and how the crocodile smiles, and it looks like he's very approachable. But the goal is really to get the fishes to come in so that he can bite down and enjoy a delicious lunch. So your job is to finish up by filling out this page in our Nearpod. This is page 309. You're also going to do page 310. You are circling 3 different answers for these 3 questions. We have a part A and part B, so remember to look at that one carefully for question number 4. Whenever we have part A and part B questions, you want to take your time, especially with part A, because typically if you get part A wrong, you're likely to get part B wrong because the answer to part B is going to come from whatever you selected for part A. And then you're going to finish out by doing question number 5. It is asking for a short response. I am looking for a paragraph, ladies and gentlemen, a paragraph that has swag. So if you remember swag, that means each of our sentences is going to S, start with a capital letter. It is going to A, have a space in between each of the words in our sentences. I spelled swag wrong. Y'all gonna let me spell swag wrong? Swag is S-W-A-G. So I just gave you the A, I gave you the S. The W means that it needs to be written neatly. So if you're writing in your packets, make sure you are taking your time, making sure that your handwriting is nice and neat. If you are typing, just make sure that you make your font large enough for me to be able to read it when I go over it. And then that G, make sure that you have the given punctuation at the end. So if you ask a question, it needs to have a question mark at the end. If you are saying something with a lot of emotion, you want to have an exclamation point at the end. So make sure every sentence that you write has swag, and give me a nicely written paragraph. So 5 sentences at least that are going to answer this question. What structural elements do the poets of revenge and the crocodile use to create certain patterns and feelings? Include details from each poem to support your response. So all it's asking is what structural elements. Is it using a rhyme? Is it using a rhythm? Does it have meters? Do you see verses? Do you see stanzas? So which one are they? And then give examples from the text in your response. So that's all I have for you all. Thank you guys for joining me today and watching this video in its entirety. If you need any help, remember that Miss Felix and myself, we can always be reached on Class Dojo. And if you reach out to us on Microsoft Teams, make sure you do it between 10 a.m. and 12 because those are our office hours. Let us know if you need any help. You guys are super smart. You are amazing scholars. So take your time, work diligently, and we will see you next time. Have a wonderful day.